What's your top 10 books of 2024? Welcome to Afifthofjack Gaming, and today we're breaking down our top 10 list of 2024. That's right, we're coming over with our top reads that we have seen and read over through the year of 2024. And with that said, there is a couple things about this. A, we gotta own it physically. B, this is our list that we ended up comprising. If you think a little bit differently, let us know down in the comments down below of why you think a little bit differently. And let us know also what's your top 10 list of something that you ended up reading. While we're talking about stuff, why don't we talk about organic price books, where you can end up using our discount code Afifthofjack to save $2 off. Or if you have 4 or more books, you can rock it with Jacket Together to save 5% off your entire order instead. Orders that have $30 or more ends up getting free shipping. That way you get exposed to the bomb-proof shipping of OPB. Enough with that, let's slide on over and figure out what our top 10 books of 2024 are. Coming in at number 10, Jake of Brave and the Boys ended up getting me on and trying it out. And honestly, I would say if you're getting new to the DC market and you have no clue about any of the characters, this would be something that can end up allowing you to dip your toes into. What is this book? Well, it's New Frontier by Darwin Cook. Has some killer art and has a good entry level that you can end up learning generally what characters you end up liking or not liking. Granted, this is off the older style of the characters, but you end up getting to get to know some origins of some of them, what the kind of characters are, and the general stories of these. This is a great way to be first exposed to the DC universe. That being number 10, what's going to be number 9? We end up having Planet Hulk. The reason I ended up loving this is the setup that it ends up going over into World War Hulk. World War Hulk is my favorite Hulk run I've read so far. I got a few of them that's in the chamber to be able to read, but like I said, this sets it all up, and this explains why the events of World War Hulk ends up going on. This is definitely something that if you're interested or you end up loving World War Hulk, you need to read this to be able to find out why emotionally he gets so charged about it. So that's number 9. Coming in at number 8 is JMS's and Karen Gillan's run of Thor. So JMS is the main driving force behind this. Gillen does a nice little way. There's a little bit of a dip that's going over with it, but the story that ends up setting it up, bringing back Asgard, how they end up bringing it back Asgard, and all the shenanigans that comes over with it, and Immortal doing some crazy stuff. That's something you're going to be finding in this book right here. This is number 8 into our entire top 10 list of best books of 2024 that we have read. Coming in at number 7, this is going to be an amazing way. This brings back, well, King Arthur back to the modern days with Once in the Future, Book 1. This is created by Karen Gillan with art by Dan Mora. This is my first introduction to Dan Mora's art, which is spectacular. Like I said, this is reintroduces King Arthur to the modern day aspect. And for me, someone that ended up stealing the show is the bad A grandma that you have inside. If that's something you're interested into, pick up Once in the Future, Book 1. Coming in at number 6, it was so good that I ended up having to go down a total rabbit hole with this character. So this is commonly seen as the foundation book of a foundation book of Daredevil. So if that doesn't give it away, well, it's Frank Miller's, I would say volume 1, because they have an omnibus and then they have a companion, which I would put as volume 2. Volume 2 ends up having Born Again, which has the big story that's going to be coming over with this series that's going to be coming out in 2025. And it's another killer book that came over with it. But this got me started going down the Daredevil rabbit hole. Though I was so wrong about that character growing up, where I'm like, oh, is this a blind guy, whatever, this. Oh man, he ends up going through ups, downs, sideways, every way, which way. He has enough turmoil And for me, has a good old Peter Luck, or they like to say Matt Luck, because that's what the alter ego is to it, that you end up being exposed to. Frank Miller is also the first starting point that I would suggest to go over with Daredevil. I choose to ignore the older stuff because the older stuff I have a hard time reading. I'm finding that out, especially with Spider-Man, if it's a character that I completely love. But it's definitely something of the times. If I'm starting a rabbit hole, I'm going to start it off with Frank Miller and keep on going with the modern. I think we're a few books from being able to have everything that's going over with a run. Some of them are out of print. So I digressed, but this ended up getting that exposure and having that amazing storyline that we ended up getting exposed to make me end up falling in love with Daredevil. We are now at our top 5 books of 2024. This is going to end up being a little bit hard to be able to end up figuring this out. But coming in at number 5, it's more of a seasonal thing that I would be saying with it. But I think you end up reading it whenever you ended up liking. But it gives a mythological character some good old origins. Coming in at number 5 is Klaus. That's right. Good old Saint Nick ended up having a bad mama jamma of an origin story that comes out of this. This is by Grant Morrison and Dan Mora on art. And Mora, oh my goodness, delivers as always. And I have to say this is my favorite story by Grant Morrison, since this is really the first story I've read of Grant Morrison. But I digress. This ends up giving origins of Klaus, how he ends up becoming, and how he ends up picking up some of the powers that he ends up having, and changes a little bit of the mythology that you end up knowing about Santa Claus. If that's something you're interested into, pick this bad boy up. Number 4 is a book that I think honestly has become my favorite of DC. And that's saying there's a lot of books that's that way that you can go with it. But this book has taken over the top spot for DC for me. And honestly, it doesn't have the main characters that you come over with it. What is this book? Well, it is Gotham Central. This has very, very little bit of Batman in the main story. But what's amazing is that this has 2 different shifts. This has the day shift, which is written by Ed Brubaker, and then also it's the night shift that's written by Greg Rucka. It's amazing. Character development makes you want to, you end up seeing everything that goes day to day with the Gotham or JCPD, and with a very little dash of Batman into the story. This is a solid book, and I would strongly suggest, if you're even on the fence, to go pick it up and end up reading it, because it's a masterpiece that you have 2 artists going back and forth with 2 different ways that they end up writing, and it's honestly pushed me over to be able to collect more of their runs. With Rucka, I ended up going into his Black Panther with his first volume of that, and with Ed Brubaker, I ended up going into Captain America, and honestly, I ended up picking up his run with Sean Phillips of Criminal. I got the first 3 deluxes of that boy coming down the pipeline. But that's not about that. It's about Gotham Central. Favorite DC book by far. Character development and amazing stories. This is definitely something to be picking up. Coming in at number 3, officially our number 3 book, is a story that didn't end up getting its full completion. And honestly, I would love to see it get completed. And I would love to see a hardcover copy of it. That's going to be Black Widow by Kelly Thompson. It's an amazing story. It's something that I haven't seen, and it's honestly the story that I wanted from a Black Widow. It's a book that you end up having to pick up to be able to find out what happens when Black Widow has a family and has to protect that family. And what happens when she breaks down? Well, Kelly knows, so maybe you should end up reading it and find out. Coming in at number 2 is our first exposure to Ghost Machine. Coming in at number 2, it answers the question is, who is the glowing man? Who is the glowing man? Well, to find out, you have to end up reading Geiger. That's right, this is a deluxe copy of Geiger, which is amazing because you end up having this nice little father where he ends up trying to protect his family and to protect other people from the bads that's out there. This talks about what happens when a nuclear bomb ends up going off and what's going to happen with the fallout with it. This is from Ghost Machine, and honestly, if they come out with a deluxe copy of it, I'm going to pick it up. This is number 2 of our entire top 10 list. This is an amazing story that comes over with it, and it has what is it? It has Jeff Johns in the main story and Gary Frank that's on the art. It's an amazing way to be able to see it, and you can see it coming together. Alright, before we end up going into what our number 1 book of 2024 is, if you ended up watching it over on Near Mint Condition, you'll end up seeing what our top book was. But if you didn't get spoiled yet, I do want to be saying an honorable mention over to Do a Powerbomb. I did end up loving it, but I ended up only reading it digitally, and unfortunately that's why it didn't end up making it onto the list. But that's definitely a story that can end up that's definitely an emotionally charged story that you can end up getting into. It's definitely a page turner that comes over to the classic thing, and I would say that would share the spot with our number 1 book that we end up having. It's by that's also by Daniel Warren Johnson, and so is our number 1 book of Murder Falcon. That's right, Daniel Warren Johnson comes over and does it again with Murder Falcon. This is getting a band back together, but there is definitely more that meets the eye with this story. There's an emotional train wreck that's going on, and you're going to be along there for the ride of that wreck. You're going to see it from the start to finish, and oh my goodness, it's going to stick with you. And I don't want to go too heavy into it because the less that you know, the better the story is going to end up being. So 2024, Murder Falcon being our number 1 read of 2024. That's right. So with that said, what did you think of it? What is your top 10 list? Let us know down in the comments down below. Also, we're trying a little bit of a different setup with it. As you can see, we have a full picture. We got a nice little logo right over here. A nice little logo of Organic Price Books right here. And we're going to try a few new things. So this is the first video with this new little setup that we ended up having. Stay tuned. Next year is going to be another crazy year that we're going to be having. We're just planning on doing a little bit more content that we ended up having, be more consistent. And also stay tuned to the beginning of next year where we end up dropping the new goals for Afifthofjack Gaming. 2025 is going to be another train ride that we're going to end up having a ball of a time. And if 2024 was amazing, well, 2025 shall be even better yet. We're going to end up getting better as we keep on going. Also, if you're liking the content that we're putting out, like, subscribe, and hit that little bell to be notified whenever we come out with new content. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.